Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Budget Magic. So this week, we are heading to Modern to play a deck I'm super excited about. This is just a really fun deck. Green, black, Leap Whip, combining two of my favorite cards from Standards past, Evolutionary Leap, Whip of Erebos, into a sweet modern shell. So as you can see, 99 bucks in the paper world, 31 ticks on Magic Online, so not a bad deal for a really fun deck for Modern. A quick reminder before we break down Green Black Leap Whip for Modern. If you enjoy this deck and you enjoy Budget Magic in general, it would be spectacular of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button down in the corner of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So let's talk some Leap Whip, starting with Whip of Erebos, one of our two namesake cards. 4 mana, legendary enchantment artifact, gives all of our creatures lifelink, and we can pay for it, tap it, and we return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield with haste. It gets exiled on our next end step. We can only do it as a sorcery, but basically, this is a way we can whip back any of our powerful things and reuse them. We have some sweet enter the battlefield triggers, some sweet ways that our creatures are more than just random attackers when we whip them back. Plus, lifelink is surprisingly relevant in aggressive matchups. Just having a whip down on the battlefield can really swing the race in our favor. We have more tricks with our whip, and that comes in the form of Evolutionary Leap. So kind of the main plan of this deck is not just to whip back creatures, but then, before they get exiled on our end step, we can Evolutionary Leap them. So Evolutionary Leap, 2 mana enchantment, you can pay a green, sack a creature, you reveal cards from your library until you hit a creature, put it in your hand, the rest of the cards go on the bottom. So this is a way we get even more value from whipping our creatures back from the graveyard. It just creates this really huge stream of card advantage and allows us to dig through our deck, find a lot of really strong, powerful creatures to help support our whip, make sure we always have something powerful to do. So our deck is playing almost all creatures. Instead of playing spells, we're using our creatures like spells because we can get those creatures back with whip, we can find them with Evolutionary Leap. So this is kind of the main package of our deck, our whip and our leap. So what are we using to support this plan? First off, we have some graveyard fillers to help with our Whip of Erebos. Satyr Wayfinder, super strong, just comes down, finds the land, so we're making sure we're able to hit our land drops, play our big stuff. Also puts some cards in our graveyard so we can later whip them back with our Whip of Erebos. Grizzly Salvage, instant speed, finds us a creature or a land among our top 5, mills the rest of them. So another way, like Satyr Wayfinder, that we can get creatures in our graveyard. Wayfinder is the better of the two because it works so well with our Whip and our Leap. We can play Satyr Wayfinder, then we can sack it, trade our useless 1/1 into another creature with Evolutionary Leap, and then if we need to in the late game, we can always whip back our Satyr Wayfinder to get some more creatures in our graveyard, more powerful creatures to whip back the next turn. Plus, we can leap it again to find another creature. So just a ton of value provided by Satyr Wayfinder. We also have some ramp. So a lot of our creatures are a little bit expensive, which means instead of just relying on our whip to get them on the battlefield, we want to be able to ramp into them. So Llanowar Elves and Sakutra-Tribe Elder give us early game plays that ramp us into our whip. We can always sack them in the late game when they're bad top decks to our Evolutionary Leap to hopefully turn them into a more powerful creature. Plus, they give us a backup plan of just hard casting our big powerful creatures when we don't have a whip on the battlefield. So Llanowar Elves just adds a green mana. Sakutra-Tribe Elder is basically a rampant growth on a stick. Better than an actual rampant growth because we can whip it back, get another land, sack it to Evolutionary Leap, etc., etc., etc. One of our using creatures as spells type creatures. As far as things we are looking to whip and leap, we have mostly a ton of one-ofs. The only other two-of in our deck is Mind Slicer, which is, oh, I'm so excited for this card. It's such a powerful effect. 4 mana, 4/3, not a bad body. When it dies, each player discards their hand, which is super strong in our deck because we want our stuff in the graveyard. Like, after we have a whip on the battlefield, we're fine with discarding our hand because we're getting all that stuff back anyway. Even without a whip on the battlefield, we can still work empty-handed better than most of our opponent's decks because we have Evolutionary Leap for card advantage and so forth. So we're always able to rebuild really quickly. But the main idea of this is we can just sack it to our Evolutionary Leap. So we play it or whip it back if we mill it into the graveyard, sack it to Evolutionary Leap. We can even do this on our opponent's draw step to hit the card that they drew for the turn, wipe away everyone's hands, and then we just win the game with our whip value while our opponent's struggling to draw any action. As far as the one-ofs in our deck, we have a bunch of removal creatures. Duplicate, exiles anything, can potentially be big if it exiles something big. A sweet whip target, because it comes back from the graveyard, exiles it. We really want creatures that provide some amount of value when they enter the battlefield. Just beating down with a whipped creature is fine. It gains us some life, maybe gets in some damage, but having enter the battlefield creatures makes it even more powerful. Shriekmaw blows up a non-black, non-artifact creature. Super sweet with whip and leap because we can evoke it for 2 mana, which either puts it directly into our graveyard for our whip, or we can sacrifice it to Evolutionary Leap in response to the sacrifice itself trigger to get another creature for our trouble. Acidic Slime deals with artifacts, enchantments, can blow up a land, very powerful in the deck. We also have some ways to get things back from our graveyard. So if we happen to mill over our Evolutionary Leaps, mill over our Whip of Ereboses, we can Eternal Witness or Green Warden of Murasa them back to our hands so we can kind of draw them from our graveyard. Also just good whip targets once they're in their graveyard. Get them back, get back something else from our graveyard, hard cast it, go from there. Thragtusk gives us a ton of value. It gives us 2 Evolutionary Leap triggers because we can sack the Thragtusk itself, sack the beast that it makes when it dies. Great when we whip it back because it triggers when it leaves the battlefield, which includes being exiled to our Whip of Erebos. So we're going to get that beast anyway. Gains us a bunch of life against aggro, just super powerful. As far as closing out the game, we got 2 different packages. One package is Hornet Queen, a great whip creature, an old standard trick actually, because even though our Hornet Queen gets exiled at end of turn, we still get to keep the 4/1/1 insect creatures with flying and death touch, which just locks down everything in the format. So hard for Death Shadows and Tarmogoyfs to attack through the little death touchers. And then after we get a bunch of creatures on the battlefield, maybe from our Hornet Queen, we can always whip back our Craterhoof Behemoth, give everything trample, make it huge, win the game on the spot with hoof, there it is value. Also worth noting, Hornet Queen great with Leap because we can stack all the tokens to get new cards if we're looking for Craterhoofs and stuff. Our other finishing package is Rune-Scarred Demon and 1 copy of Emrakul the Promised End. So Rune-Scarred Demon is more than just a tutor for Emrakul. We can use it to get anything we need. Find a whip, find a leap, any of our creatures, our removal creatures, you name it, it can find it. But normally, by the time we get to casting a Rune-Scarred Demon, we're going to have enough cards in our graveyard that we can, the next turn, cast an Emrakul the Promised End, and Emrakul the Promised End is a pretty guaranteed way to close out the game. We empty our opponent's hand while we control them, smash their creatures into our creatures to kill them. It just totally ruins our opponent's game plan. Also, while Emrakul triggers when it's cast, so we don't get the trigger when we whip it back, it's still super powerful with whip. Just as a 13/13 flying trample, that's enough to close down a lot of games all by itself, just trampling over even without the steal the turn trigger. Otherwise, as far as the rest of our non-creatures, just a place on Inquisition gives us something to do on turn 1, helps us stay alive against combo decks. As far as the mana base, a bunch of janky dual lands, Hissing Quagmire, Land of War Waste, Temple of Malady, Evolving Wilds, some basic lands. In the sideboard, we get a couple more creatures. Obstinate Baloth for aggro matchups, gives us some life gain, also can help against Liliana's and discard-based decks. Shriekmaw for more removal. We have a bunch of straight-up spell removal. Drown in Sorrow to wipe away a board of small creatures. Beast Within to destroy Tron lands, also Planeswalkers, artifacts, enchantments, 1 Nature's Claim, Duress to pick apart our opponent's hand, Tormod Script for graveyards, and that is green-black Leap Whip, and that's our budget magic deck for this week. So I think this deck is just a blast to play. It is so much fun. We're just generating so much value, doing so many tricky things. As far as level of competitiveness, I think it's somewhat competitive. We can win on the ramp package if our opponent has graveyard heat. We have a lot of powerful things going on. One thing you'll see as we play these games, we play a lot of close grindy games that could go either way. So I feel like it's good enough to beat most decks in Modern, but we're not guaranteed to win any matchup. We have a lot of like 50-50-ish matchup, it feels like, where the games are going to be really close, really hard fought. Maybe we come out on top, maybe we don't, but we're going to have a ton of fun along the way, which is the most important thing. So anyway, that's our Budget Magic deck for this week. Green-Black Leap Whip for Modern. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the gameplay videos, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, take a second and click that like button down below. It's a great way to help support the channel for free. And you can find the next video in the playlist right here.